Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the moderator of the next session, Albéric Mongrenier.
Hi. Afternoon, everyone. I hope you all had a nice lunch and that you also took the opportunity to have some coffee so you're now energized. Looking at the room, it looks like some people are still having lunch, but we'll get started anyways. So I'm Albéric Mongrenier. I'm the Executive Director of the European Initiative for Energy Security. And today I'll be moderating this panel on global momentum for nuclear energy. This is not what's written here. But I think the name speaks for itself. So without further ado, I'll introduce our speakers, starting with Saood AlHarthi, who's Vice President for Executive Affairs and Communications at the Emirates Nuclear Energy Company. Please welcome Saood.
Okay.
The company is responsible for the deployment and ownership of nuclear energy plants in the UAE, and its Baraka nuclear energy plant produces about 25% of the UAE's electricity needs. Next, we have Tomáš Ehler, who's Director General for Nuclear Energy at the Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Czech Republic. Tomáš, please.
Good afternoon.
Czech Republic has 6 nuclear reactors generating about 1/3 of its electricity and recently signed contracts to build 2 new reactors with South Korea's KHNP. And finally, Tamara Lagurashvili, who's the Director for Central and Eastern Europe at the Clean Air Task Force. Tamara, please. CATF co-leads the Nuclear Scaling Initiative, which aims to create the required ecosystem to fast-track and scale 50+ gigawatts of nuclear energy globally per year by the 2030s. So to get us started, just quickly setting the stage. From a European perspective, the European Union spends more than 1 billion euros per day on oil and gas imports to meet its energy demands. That means 2/3 of the energy we consume in Europe are actually imports. So it's clear from an energy security perspective that Europe must boost domestic production. Among other options, nuclear power offers a sovereign, low-carbon solution. The past couple of years have seen global momentum to harness the potential of nuclear energy, but also a lot of regional European-level momentum and EU energy policy seems to be becoming a bit more nuclear-friendly than it used to be a year ago. Nuclear remains in Europe a contentious topic in some countries. It still faces challenges, cost overruns, construction delays, regulatory uncertainty, and financing hurdles. But recent successes in South Korea and the UAE, for instance, show that such projects can actually be delivered on time and within budget. So the question is, what's the path forward for Europe and the world to make nuclear energy a viable pillar of a resilient energy and industrial base? So I'll get it started with Saood, if I may start with you, looking at the UAE example. So your country's got a strong track record in delivering nuclear plants. You brought 4 reactors online over the past 4 years at Baraka, working with a Korea-led consortium, and yourself acquiring the expertise. What were the key factors that contributed to the success, and can this be replicated here?
Thank you, Albéric. This is, by the way, my first participation in GlobeSec, and maybe an opportunity to thank the organizing team. A beautiful gathering, different opportunities to collaborate for business. Before answering your question, Albéric, very quickly I want to go back in time to 2008, when we launched and published our nuclear policy, the civilian nuclear policy at that time. The aim was clear. We were facing this energy demand in 2008, and it was the same year we launched our Masdar, our sister company that looks after the renewable. So we knew there is a need to diversify energy mix in the UAE at that time, and I think the decisions were good. So to answer your question, start with a clear policy when it comes to the vision. Having a very focused vision with clear objectives was really important. And if you think about it, we started from scratch. So we didn't claim that we know how to do it. We had to engage with international partners, with international stakeholders who have done this decades ago before us. So fast forward to today, we have 4 nuclear power plants in Baraka, in Abu Dhabi, in the United Arab Emirates, generating 40 terawatt annually, and covering 25% of the UAE energy demand. You're talking from 0 to 25 in 8 to 9 years. There were challenges throughout the way, but I think we have today a successful model with the support from everyone. And you need policy, you need human capacity development, and you need a clear vision down the road to achieve this.
Thank you very much, Saood. And that's a good segue into asking my next question to Tomáš. But in the meantime, I would first like to remind that you can also, the audience can drop questions in Slido. Or if you'd rather raise your hand, we can do that towards the end of the panel. We keep 10 minutes for Q&A. So Tomáš, from a Czech Republic perspective, so your country recently signed, you recently signed a contract with the Korean contractor, also KHNP, for the Dukovany project. It's a significant step forward for the Czech Republic and for the region. Do you think the current EU policy environment is conducive to this type of project? What is needed to scale nuclear in not just in the Czech Republic, but also in the broader region? What are the conditions that are needed to make it happen?
Thank you very much for inviting and looking forward to discussion. Yeah, the nuclear in the EU, I begin with the second part of the question, has not easy position. We know it's kind of ideology politics. And if we look on the power generation today, that nuclear brings over 1/3 of low carbon energy. So it's really a pillar, major source, important for energy security, 24/7 dispatchability and low carbon. But the reality, if I may help with some comparison, for a long time, the nuclear in the EU was taken rather as a Cinderella, hardworking but disregarded. It has improved in recent years, acknowledging the role, EU taxonomy and other, on the conceptual basis, but still I would perhaps switch from Cinderella to Sleeping Beauty. It's still not activated, and the conditions are not on the level playing field with other low-carbon energy sources. So this debate stands in front of us. When we look at the new program of the new Commission, the nuclear is not there, but there is a technology neutrality principle. So let's take it precisely. Last week there was a Nuclear Europe, the Confederation of Nuclear Industry meeting. The mood was half positive, half negative. I think we should be focused. To give you an example, next week there is a nuclear alliance meeting, 16 member states. That means more than half. So that's a critical mass pushing for what is needed. Perhaps I switch to that. We need, in the financing, really similar conditions for renewables, nuclear, and other low-carbon sources. And that's not only about new build. It's about related investment skills, human resources, supply chains, etc. So this is important. Then we need a proper regulatory framework on the electricity market. A lot of focus on short-term markets, a less focus on energy security, stability, and future markets. This is a new priority, so that's important to improve. And yeah, we need also, in general, swifter, more effective licensing and permitting processes, including state aid. We have an internal market. We have quite detailed and robust state aid competition framework. So we need to have a swifter processes. I mean, we see broad support there. And come back to your question, it's primarily about the homeworks at the national level. So I mean, if you look around, Czechia goes for 2+2 large units, more small and modular reactors perspectively. All countries around us, Poles 3+3 plus SMRs. Slovaks want to ramp up both large and small medium. Hungarians, Slovenes, and others. So yeah, for Czechia, a good role, a bit pivotal. Also looking on the schedule, we are first on track, which brings potential advantage for the opportunities, also for the supply chain. Of course, for us, not easy. We have to pave the way for example, at the EU level, state aid with our Dukovany decision, which is now being deepened in other cases. So, yeah, I think we should be optimistic, but we should, continue in our very intensive efforts at the domestic and EU level.
And I guess in many ways, Czechia is now pioneering and opening the way for other countries in the region, taking the risk for others. Talking about risks and de-risking, and when I come to you, Tamara, to talk a bit about the financing of all this, right? So financial de-risking mechanisms are obviously crucial for this type of large projects. So the nuclear scaling initiative, of which CATF is part two, envisions the creation of regional buyers club to aggregate demand and secure multi-unit orders for specific reactor designs. So how would that function in practice? What's the idea behind it? What are the challenges and what are the potential benefits of such an approach?
Thank you, Albéric, and thanks to Globsec team, and a big congratulations on the 20th anniversary of this very important event, which I think in this new geopolitical fragmentation gained even more momentum. A few words probably about the nuclear scaling initiative that was born out of the idea that nuclear industry has to reform itself because internal fragmentation, sometimes quite a bit of litigious relationship within the industry has really stinted the reputation. So if there is a nuclear renaissance to be really seen now in Europe and also beyond, it has to start from reforming within itself. And we are working at Clean Air Task Force with two other organizations, Nuclear Threat Initiative and Energy Future Initiative, to really go in the footsteps of some of the pledges that we see made at the international conferences, some of them quite realistic, others probably needs a reality check, but really understanding what are the structural bottlenecks for scaling up the nuclear energy. So in this first phase, we are focusing on the US and in Central and Eastern Europe. And of course, in Central and Eastern Europe, the physical security and energy security threats are completely intertwined. And I think that is the reason why the shrewdness, I think, of the countries have been ringing the alarm already well beyond the Western Europe, seeing that Russia was weaponizing, obviously, the energy sources. When you look at, obviously, at nuclear, it was already generating and producing a lot of electricity in the region. The neighboring Slovakia gets some 54% of the electricity from nuclear, and is arguably one of the cleanest grids in all of the EU. So there is a lot of momentum and lots needs to be done. Of course, the issue is that not only in CE, but in all of Europe, most of the nuclear projects are government-led projects. And especially in CE, the governments neither have the willingness nor the financial capacity to be the sole responsible party. So understanding how the public-private partnership can be forged through the order books is something that we have been looking at. We have undertaken extensive interviews beginning of this year with more than 30 stakeholders across 10 stakeholder groups in all of Central and Eastern Europe to understand what would be the appetite for putting the order books together. But let's start with what is an order book, what we mean by that. A nuclear order book is basically a collection of the firm commitments from various buyers to buckle down and really participate in a certain reactor design, which will be very helpful for sending positive signals to the market price, but also for the supply chains. Nobody will buckle down and doing extraordinary things for supply if there is going to be only one or another two demands, right? It requires really a bulk order book in this regard. And this is maybe a new phenomenon for the nuclear industry, but it has been already done in the shipbuilding, in the aircraft, with the Boeing. So we already see how the learning curve is working across the cost reduction. And I think Baraka is a very good example how the order book is working with the cost reduction, like the first unit compared to the fourth unit, so incredible cost reduction for the kilowatt per hour. So what we are currently trying to figure out is what is the appetite of the industrial players in Central and Eastern Europe to come together and form the buyers club and aggregate the demand. We will most likely start it as Poland as the industrial powerhouse of the Central and Eastern Europe, and we'll be trying to coalesce some of the biggest industrial players like aluminum and steel, chemicals, your soda and ash, pulp and paper, and everybody else. Basically, at the first stage, to understand what are the pain points, what are they needing in terms of heat and electricity, whether or not SMRs co-located with the industrial clusters could help elevate some of those demand they have now and also in 10 to 20 years, but also reverse engineering, understanding how we can bridge the gap with some of the recommendations to the European Commission. Because speaking with the European Commission, they have expressed huge interest in understanding how SMRs could be co-located with the industrial clusters. So I think one of our work going forward in 2025 and 2026 would be understanding pain points of the key industrial players, especially in light of Clean Industrial Deal, Action Plan for Affordable Energy, and understanding how the blending finance, especially CFD with PPA, could be also used as part of this process. So a lot to be seen, but the techno-economic analysis and the mathematics beyond the order books based on other industries, once again, shipbuilding and aircraft, is showing that there is a substantial learning curve and the cost decline when you are build multiple units of the same design. So we are only hoping that that could be at some point replicable to the nuclear dimension as well.
Right. I mean, definitely. I mean, if we can start building these at scale, that will make a difference. I'd like to remind that countries such as China, for instance, I think are building at the moment 27 or 28, I think, nuclear reactors currently under construction in China. Tomáš, I'll come back to you actually because Tamara touched upon regional cooperation and what can be done. Looking again at the Dukovany project, what does the project offer in terms of opportunities across the region for regional cooperation? And from the development of strong governance, you mentioned that earlier as something that's important, but also the supporting supply chains across the region. I mean, not just this one project, but other projects across the region can obviously help build that supply chain, train the workforce, and build the governance.
Not easy question. I think, as I've mentioned, the homeworks are primarily on the national level. And we have on the EU level this nuclear alliance to be more than 4 or 5 regional countries. Our Czech industry is historically active in Slovakia, Hungary, and others. So we have a bit different situation than our colleagues in the region. So I think the highest value added, as for the region, take it Visegrad or Visegrad Plus, definitely education, R&D, exchange of experiences. But I think let's not overestimate the regional for the nuclear new build project per se. For the let's say broader framework, definitely for us it means a lot of opportunities for our industry. It means also perhaps higher competition capacities to support licensing and others. I look especially at Slovak colleagues with very good capacities. And as for us, our companies are now active at Mochovce, 4th unit, new build, and gaining a lot of experience for the processes. Sorry to running out of the question, but let's take it really. It's primarily on the national basis, and it's about exchange of experience and attracting power. Special issue is, of course, our relationships with Poland. That shows a lot of activities at the university level, at the vocational training. For us, as a bit more experienced country, with at this moment higher value added on the business level, I think both sides see a lot of opportunities and synergies on the both sides of the border. It's no secret that high probably the Westinghouse will be also part of the Czech project, which means another opportunity for Czech to Poland and to Westinghouse projects all over the world and vice versa.
Thank you, Tomáš. Saood, staying on the topic of international cooperation. So you mentioned it earlier. So ENEC, your company, got technology and expertise transfers from Korean contractors, and now ENEC is in a position to actually do the same thing and transfer its own expertise to the region, to the world. Global cooperation is going to be important to meet global the projected increase in global power demand. So how can the UAE contribute? How can ENEC contribute? What are your plans?
Yeah. That's a really good question, Albéric. I think if you go back in time to COP28, which was in Dubai at the end of 2023, we led an initiative, and I'll come back to the nuclear scaling initiative Tamara mentioned. We worked with international partners to work on the declaration of tripling nuclear. And that was the first time in a COP meeting to have a nuclear industry all join forces together. So to answer your question, I think this model requires collaboration by everyone. And if you ask about the UAE successful story, if it will be exported to other nations, the short answer is yes. But there is but. There is always but when it comes to mega projects. There is no one size fits all when it comes to the policies, political stability, human capacity development. Talking about human capacity development, we have in Baraka more than 50 nationalities working there, be it engineers, admin, policy people, strategy people, which is very unique. We thought it is challenging at the beginning, but in reality, it is adding a lot of value to this project. So in last year, before we operate Unit 4, we had a similar question, Albéric, and we were saying, like, what's next for us? Our operating subsidiary will focus on the fleet management and operating the 4 power plants. But as a mother company, as ENEC, we started thinking on our next steps, be it business development, growth, investment, merger and acquisition. And we saw a real demand for such kind of support. Mentioning the nuclear scaling initiative, first board meeting, by the way, was like 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. Our CEO and managing director sits on the board. And this is maybe one of the very first times that I hear really great feedback about such new initiatives. So well done, Tamara, and you and the team. I believe when it comes to nuclear and mega projects, again, be it in nuclear or another industry, there is a real need for collaboration over competition, especially now, because we have a window. If we miss it, we'll be late. And if we think that the demand on energy is coming only from the AI and data centers, I think we will be underestimating the real demand. The companies decarbonizing their operations from the heavy industry and the big scalers require clean sources of baseload, and we believe nuclear is a solution for this.
Thank you very much. So, Tamara, I'm going to give you the opportunity also to react to that on the topic of global, regional and global cooperation. Anything else that you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you, Tomáš, about that. A lot of this needs to be done at the national level, while still leaving a lot of room for the regional collaboration. I think there are a couple of things where we see that more cooperation is needed. One is that I mentioned in the beginning that in this part of Europe, physical and energy security threats are intertwined. And especially right now, with a lot of questions about US retreating from some of the commitments and the NATO's eastern flank. Basically, Europe is becoming now the all of NATO's eastern flank. I think Macron or somebody else said last days. We need to be very clear and crystal clear about decoupling from Russia. I think that the statement and the document about phasing out Russian fossil fuels was very much a welcoming step from the European Commission. I was very pleased that apart from the natural gas with clear timelines, It also mentioned nuclear fuels. Of course, nuclear has been a little bit of the leeway in all of the sanctions because it's just not so easy to replace it, unlike other commodities. But when you look at, for instance, about the Russian fuels, right now I think 19 out of 101 operational reactors in the EU still are sourced with the Russian fuels, and most of it, of course, are in Central and Eastern Europe. I think it's only Finland outside of the sea region which still has some of the uranium from Russia. However, we have to also mention that CEE countries have done a remarkable job in diversifying. There have been some contracts with Framatome in France, Westinghouse in the US to diversify those supplies. So it has to be really clear and very important that diversifying not only with the gas and oil, but also the nuclear has to be a priority. And I think this is definitely one part where cross-regional collaboration is incredibly important. The second piece of it is important projects of common European interest. We see that as one potential avenue for pulling together some of the CEE countries, especially for the SMR R&D and understanding how the cross-border projects, for those of you who might not be familiar, IPCEI basically brings together 4 or more member states in the European Union for some big cross-border clean energy projects, and it's the way to forego some of the complexities, so to say, of the state aid. And we already seen actually this May, the first nuclear IPCEI initiated by France, supported by Romania and others, so the precedent is there, and I'm really hoping that other Central and East European countries will do more of those joint projects. And the region is not really unfamiliar to that, right? There is already EXCO power plant, which is in Slovenia, but is also producing electricity for both Slovenia and Croatia, so there is good examples already from the country, from the region. Another one is maybe sounding too ambitious, but pan-European alignment of technology selection. And we don't really mean endorsing any particular technology vendor, but right now there are more than 100 designs worldwide, and some of them are the so-called paper designs, right? So they literally only remain at the paper. And I think in Central and Eastern Europe, with the fiscal capacities that the governments are operating, especially with some embarking countries like Poland, I think it is very important to go with the tested designs in order not to face even more construction risk overruns. We are going to publish a very comprehensive technology down selection tool in autumn, where we have taken more than 20 different designs worldwide and have seen how they are performing across a variety of criteria, and we are hoping that it will help governments inform their decisions. So that could be another way where the countries in the region could collaborate. And of course, there is always the regulatory framework cooperation. Once again, when we interviewed a lot of regulators in the CEE, we have received a pushback about the word harmonization, because I think the national regulators are seeing that as a very sovereign thing. So taking this away from them is kind of a little bit frightening. But what we are now trying to advocate for is more of a collaboration. And a collaboration in very simplistic terms is that if a country A, let's say Poland is right now looking at BWRX 300 from GE Hitachi, is getting the license, and if Slovakia tries to get the same design in 2 years instead of starting from the scratch, it can use the pages out of the playbook from Poland, so that there could be a collaboration to this extent. So there are, I think, some couple of examples where collaboration is definitely more desirable.
Very briefly, Tamara, on SMRs, you mentioned paper designs. We've seen SMRs on leaflets for many years now. I think a couple of decades, and they've changed in size, in design many times. I think now the first SMR at scale is under construction in Canada. Or construction began or will begin. How far are we from deploying SMRs at scale? I mean, what's your perspective on this? But other panelists also, Saood and Tomáš, feel free also to jump in on this.
Thank you. I think it's everybody's guess. However, there are very positive signals, obviously, from Darlington. I think 2 days ago or yesterday, we had a kind of a nuclear day from the UK as well. The Sizewell C, good major funding, and the Rolls-Royce SMR as the endorsed partner in this project. We also see actually not only in Canada and the UK, but also in Europe as well. For instance, Fermi Energy, Estonian company, is quite bullish on the order book style of SMR in the Nordics and the Baltics. OSGE OSGE Syntos in Poland is also quite bullish on that. So they are actually have the shovel in the ground. This is all not the paper related things. So I think there are some very positive signals coming from beyond, but also within the CE as well on SMRs.
Yeah, if I may add to that, I think if your question was 5 years ago, I would say we're still not yet there, and we're still on this kind of planning phase and leaflet designs. But today, in addition to the samples or examples Tamara mentioned, you're talking about TerraPower and some US NuScale, GE Hitachi Vernova. If we zoom out a bit as well, China is an example of some of the SMR kind of categorized kind of projects. And I believe there is really good progress, but still there is a hesitation from the big key players in the market to go first and doing it from a viable financial perspective in the right way. That's the real challenge now when it comes to SMR progress, in my opinion.
Thank you. So, Tomáš, want to chip in?
Almost everything has been said. We see some sobering as for the cost and economics, which the closer we are getting to first of kinds, it seems that some risks and cost increases has been underestimated. Let's see. We have to have literally experience with licensing, construction, commissioning, operation, which we do not still have. The CGN 100 is let's say the first SMR of the first kind, still now 7-8 years under construction, so it's not 5 years, definitely for the first kind. That shows that even in China, it's not going in 4 or 5 years, and we have to see. But yeah, we have to also to diversify. We have in Czechia 3 interested investors, strongest Czech, who is now shareholder of Rolls-Royce SMR. So this could be, this is not small one, this is a medium. Let's see. In the internal EU market, the cost of generation will play very significant role, not only on the business level, but also commercial, but also from the point of view of state aid, budgets, and let's say burdens for taxpayers or for consumers. So not easy, but still we have also to go this way to explore and to have diversification. Let's see.
Yeah, lots of pressure on SMRs, huh? Everyone's watching. But at the same time, many opportunities, because many countries who have, opposed also, conventional nuclear for many years or decades, actually are more supportive of SMRs and other solutions. Fusion is still, quite far away, but hopefully SMRs are a lot closer. I don't have any questions on Slido, so I'll take questions from the audience. Don't be shy. Please just raise your hand, and whenever we'll see a hand up, the microphone will be handed over to you. There has to be some questions.
I can fill the gap until we get some questions. if you want, Albéric. Yeah, please.
On the first row, wait a sec.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, are we going to import other technology from the US and other countries in the EU, or are we looking at indigenous EU designs? And are we considering, their role in the part of our, energy security and our technological advancement? Otherwise, we're going to end up importing, like we've done, solar panels from China, 96%. We will not create our own European technology. So I think that's an aspect which hasn't been discussed in this forum at all.
And to your point, I mean, there's the technology and the expertise in Europe, but it's only with one company, right? That's also one of the issues right now. How do you get it? How do you spread that? Maybe Tamara, you wanna?
Yeah, just quickly on that. I think that Europe is, in energy-wise, not only in the nuclear, is never going to be self-sufficient with the constrained resources and the land and so on that we have. So investing in the reliable partners is going to be very important. So I think there is not going to be a situation where we will be able to, and I think EDF is doing a good job, but I think there is not even enough workforce, or the supply chain is not fully developed to provide for all the needs that there might be in sea. On the U.S. perspective, I think right now there's a lot of uncertainty, obviously. We had 4 executive orders issued, I think, 2 weeks ago about the nuclear, which I think on the one hand, yes, has been very positively taken because it obviously puts a lot of emphasis of nuclear being the backbone of U.S. decarbonization and the energy dominance, as now they like to say. But unfortunately, these executive orders really don't come with any clear policy signals how they should be done. We have also seen the overhaul of the regulatory department there. So there is a lot of question marks there. That being said, US has been a very important player, I think, in Central and Eastern Europe. Project FIRST, Project Phoenix, from coal to nuclear has been substantial movers of the needle in the region. So we only hope that there will be some remnants of this in the new transatlantic partnership, but I will not write US off in this new geopolitical dimension.
Thanks, Tamara. Tomáš?
Very shortly, Czech experience, and I would say consistent approach. The competition can bring us further. It's important. On one hand, so on the other hand, nuclear, it's really very close to national security, essential interest. So for us, that means not Russian or Chinese technology, or more precise, we should be open the competition for our ally and partners, such as US, Korea, Japan, and it brings results. You can choose, you can have different models. As Poles or Hungarian friends direct IGA to select partner, or to have a national champion as France, or to go for a competitive approach, such as Czechs or Dutch or Swedes. And yeah, it's more challenging, demanding, but at the end, if you look on our case, through the competition, at this stage, we can reach quite very competitive prices, which lower the costs and the needed state aid. So I think, from the competitive commercial, but I think also for the innovations and development, it's good to have the competition with our allies.
You need to find the right balance between competition and collaboration in nuclear if you want to make it work and make it cost efficient. Saood, your perspective on this?
The balance point is exactly what I was going to talk about. Very good point, very critical. However, the way I see it, especially going through the experience back home in the UAE, we needed to collaborate with everyone. So the way I see it, and talking about the balance, there is a very thin line between pushing harder to be a self-efficient and self-provider when it comes to that technology, or being a bit open with other nations and other technology providers, while at the same time maintaining the political aspect as was mentioned from the very early day-to-day. So if you think about it only from a technology perspective and from an energy security, as Tomáš said, we gotta be open with everyone, and otherwise it will be very challenging to be self-dependent.
And if I may weigh in on this, I mean, there's only so many companies in the world that actually have the technology. It's not like we're talking about manufacturing solar panels or windmills or turbines. It's a bit of a different business, so it's a bit more concentrated. But I mean, there is a very large, to be frank, across. Being a French national myself, I'm not a nuclear expert, but well versed. I mean, I like nuclear, but there's not just expertise in France. There's expertise all across several countries in Europe, including Germany, where you still have many contractors contractors involved in European nuclear supply chains. So I mean, there's definitely something to build on there. So we've got about 3 minutes left. So I'll just give everyone, all the panelists, the opportunity, 1 minute each, to just highlight anything that you didn't get the opportunity to bring up yet, but that that you'd like to conclude with. What's most important in your eyes to make nuclear power a success, and how can we best collaborate to scale this? And maybe Saood, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'll summarize it in one word: serious collaboration between all of those key players, be it policymakers, developers, technology providers, think tankers, anything that could really push towards the same direction should really support us to achieve that goal. And as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to a common challenge we face, all of us today, it is the energy demand. And we need more collaboration, I would say, and less competition with other providers.
Thank you very much, Saoud. Tomáš?
Yeah, I don't want to repeat myself too much. I think it's important at the national level to have all stakeholders and ideally all political parties in favor of nuclear, to have a stable environment. We have this comfort and we are thankful for that. In the region, as I have, there are some value added. I have perhaps forgotten the nuclear safety regulators, which also at the regional level have perhaps closer ties. Then, in our case, EU, especially the investment conditions, regulatory framework, and for us, not least important, good collaborative relations with US, Korea, Japan, UAE, and to exchange experiences, look at the opportunities in supply chains, and in generally support and advocate the advantages of nuclear. Last word, of course, the energy systems cannot be based only on nuclear. We need also diversification. That's clear, and that's part of our national energy policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomáš. And Tamara, take it away.
I would say three things. One is the governance. I think in many countries in this region, the government structures, the cross-ministerial coordination is not necessarily always conducive to carrying out the long-term projects. I think we need to overcome the political short-termism when it comes to the nuclear and understand how the optimal governance structure should be set up in order to implement on those projects. The second is the innovation. With the scale and the scope of the ambition that we have for the nuclear, just doing things that we used to do will not deliver. That's why we are trying all different ways of seeing whether or not any of them will come through. And if any of them will come through, this going to be a huge win for all of us. And the third one, I think, is overcoming the hypocrisy sometimes from the European Union. It's very good that we have now technology agnostic approach, which is a good win and a shift of the narrative, but I think it has to be enabled by a better policy and the financial incentives.
Thank you. And with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you for a great discussion, and please give our panelists a round of applause and stay in your seats. The program will continue with our next session, which will be on shielding the